History has recorded its share of terrible monarchs, Emperor Nero, who allegedly fiddled while Rome burned, even the terrible whose paranoia led to mass executions, Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, whose extravagance helped trigger the French Revolution, but incompetence presents a different kind of danger. Some rulers are remembered not for their cruelty, but for their complete inability to lead their nations through critical moments. Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, destroyed a 300-year-old dynasty within 23 years of rule. His reign ended with revolution, civil war, and his execution alongside his entire family in a basement in Yekaterinburg. Today we examine whether Nicholas II was the worst monarch in human history. Nicholas Alexandrovich Romanov was born on May 18, 1868, as the eldest son of Tsar Alexander III. His education followed the traditional pattern for Russian crown princes: foreign languages, history, military science, economics, and political theory. Contemporary accounts describe Nicholas as pleasant but unremarkable. He excelled in languages and enjoyed military exercises, but showed little aptitude for statecraft. He led a comfortable life of studies, travels, and socializing with European royalty. One event profoundly shaped his worldview. On March 13, 1881, his grandfather, Tsar Alexander II, was assassinated by revolutionary terrorists. Alexander II had been one of Russia's most reform-minded monarchs, and both his son and grandson concluded that reform had led directly to his death. This belief in absolute monarchy as divinely ordained would define Nicholas's entire reign. Following his grandfather's death, Nicholas became crown prince and served in the military before his father gradually introduced him to governance. In November 1894, Alexander III died unexpectedly. Nicholas, at 26, ascended to the throne. His diary reveals his apprehension, noting he felt unprepared to rule an empire of over 125 million people. His first major public address shattered liberal hopes. For decades, progressive Russians had advocated for constitutional government and a parliament. Nicholas dismissed these calls as senseless dreams and vowed to uphold absolute autocracy as firmly as his father. Despite disappointing the political elite, Nicholas remained popular among ordinary Russians, who revered him as Batyushka Tsar, or Father Tsar. This image suffered its first damage in May 1896 during coronation celebrations in Moscow. A public feast at Khodynka Field attracted hundreds of thousands. The massive crowd surged forward, and in the resulting stampede, more than 1,300 people died, with thousands more injured. Nicholas's decision to attend a French ball that same evening, while families searched for their dead, earned him the epithet Bloody Nicholas. Nicholas pursued an active foreign policy, particularly expanding Russian influence in the Far East. This brought Russia into conflict with Japan, and war began in 1904. Russian leadership expected swift victory over what they perceived as an inferior Asian power. Japan defeated Russia in virtually every major engagement. The incomplete Trans-Siberian Railway hindered troop movements. Russian forces suffered from inadequate equipment and poor coordination. The naval war culminated in the Battle of Tsushima in May 1905, where the Russian Baltic Fleet was comprehensively destroyed after sailing halfway around the world. The defeat damaged Russia's military reputation, strained the economy, and eroded public confidence in the government, creating conditions for domestic unrest. Discontent with the war combined with economic grievances to create revolutionary conditions. In late December 1904, strikes paralyzed St. Petersburg. The situation escalated on January the 22nd, 1905, during Bloody Sunday. A large procession of workers, led by Orthodox priest Father Georgy Gapon, marched toward the Winter Palace. Demonstrators carried religious icons and portraits of the Tsar. Their petition requested political reforms, including a parliament, alongside economic improvements. Many believed the Tsar was unaware of their suffering. Imperial troops opened fire on the unarmed demonstrators. Several hundred died, with thousands wounded. The massacre destroyed the traditional image of the benevolent Father Tsar. Revolutionary activities spread rapidly throughout the empire. Strikes, demonstrations, and terrorism became widespread. Naval mutinies occurred, including aboard the battleship Potemkin. The government's attempts at suppression failed. Facing collapse, Nicholas reluctantly signed the October Manifesto in October 1905, granting civil liberties and promising a constitution and elected legislature, the State Duma. However, Nicholas's private writings reveal his deep resistance. He viewed absolute authority as a sacred inheritance he could not surrender. Nicholas systematically undermined these reforms. He dissolved the First and Second Duma when they proved critical. He modified electoral laws to ensure loyalist representation. The fundamental laws of 1906 established that the emperor retained power to reject any legislation, effectively maintaining autocratic control. Nicholas appointed Pyotr Stolypin as prime minister. Stolypin combined harsh suppression with genuine reforms, restoring order and addressing economic grievances. However, Nicholas grew uncomfortable with Stolypin's popularity, once writing that Stolypin imagined himself indispensable. The most controversial aspect of Nicholas's reign involved Grigory Rasputin, a Siberian peasant who gained extraordinary influence over the imperial family. Rasputin had traveled to religious sites, developing a reputation as a holy man and healer. Upon arriving in St. Petersburg in 1903, his charisma gained him access to influential figures and eventually the aristocracy. In 1905, Nicholas and his wife Alexandra met Rasputin through court connections. The meeting might have remained insignificant except for a medical crisis. The Tsarevich Alexei, Nicholas's only son and heir, suffered from hemophilia, a hereditary bleeding disorder. Any injury could result in fatal bleeding, and medical science had no effective treatment. In 1907, during one of Alexei's hemorrhagic episodes, Alexandra contacted Rasputin. He responded that God had heard her prayers and the child would not die. The bleeding ceased. Modern historians suggest Rasputin's advice to avoid medical interventions prevented doctors from administering aspirin, which was worsening the condition by thinning the blood. Alexandra, deeply religious and desperate to save her son, interpreted this as evidence of Rasputin's divine powers. He became her most trusted advisor, giving him significant indirect influence over political decisions. Rasputin's presence generated intense controversy. His reported excessive drinking and inappropriate conduct with women became widespread gossip. Rumors, likely false but damaging, suggested an improper relationship with the empress. Multiple Romanov family members, including Nicholas's mother, urged him to distance himself from Rasputin. However, Alexandra's conviction that Rasputin was essential to Alexei's survival meant he retained his position despite growing opposition. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914 triggered the First World War. Russia's alliance commitments as protector of Slavic nations brought it into conflict with Austria-Hungary and Germany. Russian public opinion initially supported intervention. The war exposed Russia's structural weaknesses on a massive scale. The military faced a technologically superior German army while suffering chronic supply shortages. The inadequate railway infrastructure could not support modern warfare's logistical requirements. The summer of 1915 brought devastating defeats known as the Great Retreat. Simultaneously, Empress Alexandra grew concerned about the popularity of Grand Duke Nicholas Nikolaevich, who commanded the army. She feared he might challenge Nicholas's authority and urged the Tsar to assume personal command. In August 1915, Nicholas replaced his uncle as commander-in-chief. His ministers, his mother, and the Duma leadership all opposed this decision, recognizing the Tsar would now be personally blamed for every military failure. Nicholas rejected their counsel. This decision proved catastrophic. The Tsar's absence from the capital meant he was no longer managing civilian government during increasing domestic crisis. Food and fuel shortages created severe hardship. Industrial production struggled. Worker strikes disrupted manufacturing. Alexandra effectively administered domestic affairs in Nicholas's absence. Her German birth and close relationship with Rasputin, who opposed the war, fueled rumors they were German spies. Nicholas appointed 4 different prime ministers during 1916 alone. In 1915, moderate and liberal Duma factions formed the Progressive Bloc, demanding government responsible to the legislature. Nicholas refused, viewing such concessions as betraying his sacred duty to maintain autocratic rule. This eliminated what many historians consider the last opportunity for peaceful reform. By early 1917, military casualties, economic hardship, and political instability had created revolutionary conditions. The Russian army had suffered millions of casualties. Industrial production declined. Food distribution systems broke down, causing severe shortages. In March 1917, protests in Petrograd escalated into general crisis. Military units stationed in the capital refused orders to suppress demonstrations. Some troops joined the protesters. The Duma leadership attempted to negotiate, requesting government responsible to the legislature. Nicholas rejected these appeals. Russia's military high command concluded the monarchy had become an obstacle to continuing the war and maintaining order. Senior generals called for Nicholas's abdication. On March 2, 1917, Nicholas signed the abdication document, abdicating for himself and his son Alexei. He designated his brother, Grand Duke Michael, as successor. Michael refused without guarantees from a democratically elected assembly, effectively ending the Romanov dynasty's 304-year rule. The provisional government assumed power, placing the former Tsar and his family under house arrest. In July 1918, following the Bolshevik Revolution, Bolshevik forces executed Nicholas, Alexandra, their 5 children, and several servants in Yekaterinburg. Was Nicholas II the worst monarch in history? Other rulers have committed greater atrocities. The scale of deliberate cruelty under various tyrants exceeds anything directly attributable to Nicholas. However, Nicholas's reign represents catastrophic leadership failure. He inherited the largest contiguous empire in the world with vast resources. Within 2 decades, it collapsed entirely, replaced by a revolutionary government that would shape the 20th century. Nicholas's inflexible commitment to absolute autocracy prevented necessary reforms. His inability to recognize and retain talented administrators deprived the government of effective leadership. His susceptibility to his wife's influence, particularly regarding Rasputin, damaged the monarchy's credibility. His decision to assume military command during World War I associated him directly with failures while creating a power vacuum at home. The consistent pattern reveals fundamental flaws in his understanding of statecraft. Every major decision compounded existing problems. While Nicholas may not be the worst monarch ever, he certainly ranks among history's most incompetent rulers, whose failures had consequences lasting generations. If you found this examination of Nicholas II's reign informative, please subscribe to our channel for more in-depth historical analyses. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on Nicholas's place in history, or suggest other controversial monarchs you'd like us to examine. Don't forget to like this video and share it with anyone interested in understanding how leadership failures can reshape entire nations. Thank you for watching.